So you said, make sure it was the best outcome for the students. It is all about our students. Students. It is their learning experience, their learning environment, their memories, their experiences that they will associate with learning and doing things that are sometimes difficult. And so it's all about the students. And one of the most important steps to being about the students is knowing your students, knowing them. Who are they? What are they about? Knowing your students. And that's a big part of standard one, because you can't design appropriate instruction that reflects all students unless you know your students. That's not going to happen. We have to know our students in order for us to be able to design appropriate instruction for all of those said students, getting to know them. And sometimes, it's not I don't want for you to think that it's just enough to do a sort of not survey, but one of those, yeah, I guess surveys, beginning of the year surveys, which are not bad because you need to start somewhere, right? So you can totally do that, especially, in English classes, if you're trying to assess their writing skills also. But continuing to get to know them, and know what's going on in their life, what their needs are. Things change in a kid's life, and a lot of times they don't show us outwardly, but it takes, a toll on their grades, and we can see that the grades are dropping after they have been, okay for so long. And having a good rapport, having a good relationship with your students is so vitally important to you being able to notice those differences. There's nuanced difference. They don't, feel like many of them going and complaining or talking about things going on in their life. So making sure we know our students, and then on top of knowing them, being able to identify what are their needs, what other things can I be doing and including in my class via strategies, via activities, via practicing of a particular skill. How do I, make them supported, remove as many barriers to learning as possible, and making sure that the learning experience is all about them. The types of assessments we try to choose, yes, they're assessing our learning objective, but we want to make them appropriate for our students. Find ways that you can assess them, different ways that you can assess them, not all just always having them write the answer, maybe doing an oral quiz or individual quiz or something else. Finding different ways to let our students shine. It doesn't always have to be the same thing, the same assessments. Like, we're trying to build on their strengths and, instill in them a love of learning, and just a confidence. And you do that by doing hard things and then getting better at them. And then you learn, okay, everything that's hard in the beginning, I could just practice at it and get better, giving them those opportunities. And I'm going to give you an example of something that I did with my students. And now the first time I did this, it was closer to the end of the year. I want to say it was like February or March. And so at that point, and you guys know how I'm always like, get to know your students, like build relationships, because your students will work so hard for you, do crazy hard things if they think like Miss Sauceda believes in me and I believe in myself too. So I pride myself on building strong relationships. I did not know half of what I thought I knew about my students until I did this assignment and with this activity, and it became like it's a yearly thing now. And I've actually had a student that I was their intern teacher, and he did the 6-word memoir, but on one of our sister campuses that started doing it after. But this is just a activity that my teacher friend and I came up with. We thought it would be a great idea because we're really big bookworms. We're always at Barnes and Noble, and there was a book called the 6-word memoir. And it was born from an anecdote, just a story of a journalist that asked Ernest Hemingway to sum up his life in 6 words. The memoir is like the story of your life, right? Or a memory. And so his was for sale, baby shoes never worn. 6 words. And so people have speculated, like, what could it mean? And so we decided it would be really cool to teach them about the power of words, the power of syntax, by sort of shortening their message to just 6 words. And depending on how you punctuate it, it can give different meanings. So for Ernest Hemingway, his was for sale, baby shoes, excuse me. Sorry. Baby shoes, never, oh, good Lord. Never worn. And so, I mean, when we introduced it, we talked about like what could he mean and the whole where this comes from. And then we looked at examples that came out in the book because they got 6 word memoirs from famous people and writers and politicians and leaders. So a lot can be sort of construed, and you might not know unless you're talking to the person and they explain the story behind it. So we did the 6 word memoir. Afterwards, it was such a powerful like activity for me. I mean, I cried at times because of what I learned that I didn't know about my students based on their 6 word memoirs. But that we had this shirt like memorialize everybody's, that everybody's 6 word memoir is in this shirt for the 2 classes that took place in it. They're in really small print, but everyone's there and their initials are there. And after our first year, it became such a huge project that we could no longer fit everybody's in the 6 words. It had to be like the whole front of the shirt was a big block and with everyone's words, or make it. So this was the assignment. Their task in a nutshell. Oh, here it is. For sale, baby shoes never worn. I didn't realize that this was like the explaining of it. But where did it begin? Ernest Hemingway was asked these things, and then here's some examples. But these are our finished product, my students. So they had to write their 6 word memoir, and they had rough drafts. Like we didn't just write it once, like, because the first ones were bad. They were just, not really paying attention to like carefully choosing their words, using diction and thinking about how syntax might change. And so always trying to solve the puzzle, and her art piece that accompanied it was this. And they could be there were several restrictions, I don't really remember, but this year they could have 3D models. I think that we sort of that got phased out at some point for a reason. Shattered, mended, restored, rewind, press play. So this was a student's, and you'll see that there's like a shot glass broken here, or a bottle glass of some sort. Kind of looks like a shot glass is what I said then. I strongly believe in my dream. So it's pretty straightforward, but this student was a very good writer, and she loved to write, and she really just didn't like the idea of only leaving it to 6 words. So she actually wrote an essay and put it on there. So I'm not crazy, I'm just special. So this was a student's he drew himself, painted himself, and then he put these on there. Millions of emotions, not enough space. Living life hidden prevents being hurt. Should we like put the words on the mask here? No one stays lost in darkness. So we had like this one, you couldn't see the punctuation, and the student said, I didn't want punctuation because I felt it would just lead to, but this way you had to think about it. What if it's this way? What if it's that way? And I thought that was genius, but there's 2 ways you can punctuate this. No one stays, which is sad, and then they're lost in darkness, or no one stays lost in darkness. Like there, you can get out of it. So, loves like heaven, hurts like hell. This one was, everyone gave them, the students gave them a little bit of a hard time for being so formulaic and how it sounded like a song. But this one really broke my heart. Daddy never really used that word. And so she had this whole story of like never having her father be there, and being, raised by a strong mother, and not feeling, sort of sadness in her real life unless we're in school and everyone's talking about like what, their quince, and this was sort of around that time, and different things that students would say. And it was heartbreaking because I knew her so very well. And I didn't know that, I mean, I knew her mother was always the one to come in, and that she was likely a single mom, but I didn't know that it was so her father was so absent, and that she felt things as a result of it. Name David, but feel like Goliath. And this is an actual painting, and someone stole it from my classroom one year. He gifted it to me, and someone I'd had many people ask to buy it, even other professionals. So I don't know who stole it. I don't want to point any fingers, but it did go missing. Still the same person, just different. And so they all had these powerful stories. Being two persons is not easy. And this was got in like 2007 or 2006. And this student was an ELL student. And beautiful smile only lasts a while. And then near our students, we had wanted to honor them for all of their hard work that went into their stuff. And we sort of had 2008, there it is, 2007, 2008 school year, an art gallery show where their parents came with them, and that they were so very proud of them and the work that they had done. So I built so many incredibly deeper relationships after this, and the students had to take their star, had to take their AP exam, many of them, and I just felt that year a vigor and a trust from on behalf of the students, from my students' perspective, after that project, after having sort of even built even deeper relationship with them. And once our students know we're in their corner, we see them, we value them, we hear them, they will do the hard stuff for us. It's not always fun. You're a math teacher. We're not always going to be sitting pretty. We are once we get through the thick of it and we understand the process skill. And then it is fun because everyone likes to feel right and to feel, able to do difficult things. We have to set up opportunities, create, design, implement activities and practices to help our students feel comfortable and build doing hard things. They're not going to do that if you don't have a, sorry, I'm looking for the domain 3. Here it is. We were in domain 3 last Saturday talking about engaging instruction. I'm just going to review a couple of slides but if you know your students, you know what interests them, you have you know what it engages them, this becomes easier. Knowing your students is a must. Building relationships before building rigor. Rigor is doing the hard stuff. I mean, we're going to be reluctant, and we have to build up to them doing hard things and having opportunities where they're successful. If they're doing hard things and always being unsuccessful, then we need to adjust things and give some, assessments that will allow for victories to build up academic confidence, to build up the stamina and the sort of grit that is necessary to do some of the more difficult academic things that we need our students to be able to do. So providing appropriate instruction that actively engage students in the learning process. Remember, it is their learning experience. We're there for them. Promote student engagement by structuring your lessons effectively, framing your lessons, but also being flexible, not being a stringent, ever immovable person. Yes, you have to have structure. For instance, in my class, we would have there was a routine and a procedure every single day. I am at the door greeting you, saying something, setting the tone, and, like welcoming you to my classroom. Not just because in many of the schools that I worked at, it was mandatory, because even then some teachers didn't do it, but because I want to set the tone for how class is going to go. And then inside, there are things that I had to teach my students in the beginning, set up that route, that procedure for them, to follow when they came in, and they do it enough times, and we do it enough times that it becomes routine, right? And so one of those that I used was, I would have an editing something. There were different things that they needed to start thinking on getting done. And one of the ways that I can engage them to come in and get right to work is by putting up, and wasn't difficult to find a new one every single day. A celebrity person misusing syntax or vocabulary or something, and that being a bell ringer, and having them revise whatever it was, either for meaning or for, grammar, or both. And so very often it was Donald Trump's. This is way before he was president. But he very often provided my class with like excellent things to revise and edit, like just laughable. But we would take any, I mean, there would be Kim Kardashian or whatever. They were young and in high school, and I knew that that would catch their interest. Obviously, it had to be appropriate, but it was meaningful and relevant to them, and connected to exactly what we were doing, and it worked. And then I went in and went straight into the introduction of vocabulary we're going to be using today, which was such a necessary thing for both my ELL students and my special ed students. But I always say ELL strategies work for everyone. And the reason they work for everyone is because kind of all native English speakers are a little bit learning a second language, because academic specific vocabulary is not like general English that everyone knows. And most of our students are excellent in their BICS, their behavioral, interpersonal, communication skills, right? Just in interpersonal skills, but basic interpersonal skills. I don't know why I said behavioral, but the cognitive, academic, language skills, which is CALPS, everybody's sort of new to that, and everybody could use supports, language supports, clarifications on ideas in that sense. So it's why ELL strategies literally work for everyone. Super important for our special ed students for those to be applied. Giving purposeful grouping, thinking about who your students are as people, their strengths, their needs, and then, sort of creating carefully cooperative learning groups that are purposeful and that are going to help them help each other grow. We can't do it alone. They have to be able to like help each other, and they're excellent sources of like native language speaking in the basic interpersonal communication skills. So extending your wait time always, that is always, always, always best practice. I like to extend it like a crazy person by asking them, having it written down, responding on a piece of paper really quickly, takes less than a minute, and then turning to their partner and talking about it. And doing that and have that huge extension, and then also that many opportunities for language practice before we come back to a whole group and I ask everyone. And it's always the case that even the ELLs, even students who are shy, are more confident to answer. They've already talked about what's right and wrong, and if they were wrong, they negotiated with someone, because I've carefully paired you and grouped you near someone who is going to benefit your knowledge and your skills, that you both will benefit from each other. Activating prior knowledge is really important. Activating that spot in the brain where I know a little bit of something. And if it's not there, then we have to, provide them by building background knowledge. If they have very little prior knowledge with a certain content, then it's our job to make sure we begin the space in the brain that gives them background knowledge on what we're going to delve deeper into. Using their student experiences, having them think about, try to make connections between what we're learning and what they already know, and then valuing those experiences in the instructional setting. actively closely monitoring your instructional effectiveness. Is this working for all of my students? Remember, it's all about the students. Is this working for everyone? Because even if it's not working for a few, there has to be something that's done in order to rectify that. And I think that we went through a question last week that sort of was about that. I think there were 4 students in a math class that didn't get, a particular, I don't know, believe it was about decimals. And so what was the correct way of moving forward? And the correct way was make sure that the students that do get it have something to do and work on that's moving them forward, but also have time to do a small group of support for those students so that when we do move on all together as a class, we're good to go. Activating internal motivation via student interest and choice. So this motivating the students by doing stuff that they would find interesting. And I would have some of the older teachers when I first started teaching, because my first year was 2003, and I was really young in 2003. Like I couldn't even buy alcohol, but I was a teacher. And when I was pregnant and as a teacher, I had once had a substitute because I was coming to class late from the copier machine because I was waiting for things and there were all these people using it. So I'm running with my things and I'm pregnant. And I had a substitute who was unfamiliar with me asked me why I wasn't in class. Like she wanted to see my hall pass. I said, I work here. Like I was like, I work here. But I had some teachers say, I don't have to do things that you think are interesting. Well, actually, you do. If you want them to learn and be engaged, you do have to take some care in doing things that would be more interesting. I mean, you don't, and then your students' brains are not going to be internally motivated or turned on, if you will, and ready to work the way we need them to be. They're our audience and it's their learning experience. So why not take things that they're interested in and try to infuse them into our lessons to better motivate and interest our students? The goal is for them to be engaged. And so by those means, you do have to take their interests and give them a choice. Give them a choice. So I had my students when they did their 6-word memoirs, they had to do 10 of them. And we actually had feedback sessions where we talked about them, and I gave them feedback on the 5 that I really liked, and then from those they whittled it down even further, and we had another feedback session. But there was a lot of choice for them, and they were into it, and they were proud of their final choice, even though they had many more memories and sort of stories that they could have gone with. But they were all so invested, so excited about, and it was, since it was about them, it's easy to be motivated when you're doing something, and even something that's difficult and hard, painful emotionally, to feel proud about it and to feel fulfilled. Giving them those feelings is the greatest internal motivator. Having them do difficult things, challenging things, and having victories, it activates internal motivation. You like that feeling. Everybody likes that feeling. And so giving our students, engaging lessons, engaging activities that also, help motivate them because they're doing challenging things and being successful. Very, very important. We also want our students to use, self-motivation strategies. Student interest, student choice helps them self-motivate. So if they chose this one, they're going to do their best job. So it's the one they chose. And always using our ELL strategies, the English language proficiency standards and strategies, keeping that in mind, because you can't be engaging if the student doesn't understand what's going on. So finding ways to assure that our language learners can benefit from the things that you're doing, so that meaning you have those supports in place to be able to access their prior knowledge, to be able to, direct instruct vocabulary and have them sort of understand the main ideas for the class. All right, let's take a look at this question. Would anyone like to read the question for me?
I'll read it.
Thank you so much, Miss Williams.
Okay, it says a fifth grade social studies teacher is teaching a lesson on the various types of governments. The teacher decides to split the class into groups and perform a jigsaw activity where groups of students learn about a form of government. The students in each group then disperse to teach what they learned to other students. Which of the following benefits does a jigsaw activity provide?
Okay, excellent. What keywords and phrases?
Fifth grade in social studies.
Yes, that's correct. Hold on one moment. Fifth grade. And it is social studies, but that's not super important. Remember, the content area is not so important unless it's English language arts and reading, because they're talking about like it from a language perspective with our ELLs, because it's not going to be about the content area. Let's say it's a history class. Oh, it's a government class, but anyway, that's not as important because we're looking at the pedagogy. So various types of government. What else can we highlight for our consideration as we are going through the answer choices and weighing each of them against the things we identified as important, the keywords and phrases? Remember, the devil's in the details. And what way can we sort of put the word in layman's terms and sort of discuss the goal for the teacher here, what's happening? So what else?
Is it split the class?
Decides to split the class and perform a jigsaw activity. So we have the split class jigsaw activity where groups of students learn about a form of government. So we have groups of students. It doesn't say how many, but we have groups of students, and they're each learning about a different form of government. We know there are various. The students in each group then disperse to teach what they have learned to other students. Which of the following benefits does jigsaw activity provide? So the question's asking us, like, what's in layman's terms? What is it asking?
It's asking for the benefits. I
Right.
guess
So
what the students will learn, and then they're gonna come back and I guess teach in their individual groups.
that's correct. So they're in groups to begin with. Typically what happens is like you have them in their groups and their set groups here. And you direct instruct kind of like a little bit of an overview, and then each group learns about a different one, and then they're all about a different one, and then so the groups get changed and they go teach the other group what the other ones learn, what they learned. So when you're teaching them whole, they're in one group, then they move to a group, learn about only one. Wait, how does this go? No, they learn about only one and then move to teach the others. And they each bring, like, they're each going to be an expert. Like, one will be an expert on the monarchy, and one will be an expert on oligarchy, and one will be an expert on democracy, and one will be an expert on like authoritarianism. And they're all going to be learning only about that one. And so these ones don't know anything about the monarchy or the democracy, not in deep dive. And so they switch, and there's 4 in each one, and there's 4, each one is going to move, and they'll share their information with the group that follows. And then You can do this several times or you can do it once, depending on how many students you have and what the math works out to. But it's a very useful tool. Can somebody tell me why you would think, sorry, I had to erase my drawings because ever since 2003, I have been doing a horrible job at drawing things out for my students. And I started teaching English before the internet, so I had to draw a lot of vocabulary related stuff. But your jigsaw, and we can go and watch a video of the jigsaw activity. In fact, we have before. Maybe we'll do that before we disperse for today. But the jigsaw activities are really useful to use in class. And so they're saying, what is the benefit of doing this? Does this provide? So before we go look at the answer choices, just from sort of what I explained, what would be the benefit from a pedagogical standpoint? You know, think about what kind of activities I use in my class as an example of extending my wait time. It just feels weird to ask a question and wait a lot of seconds. It's just like gives me a weird feeling. I don't like it. So let's just write about it, talk about it, and come back and you guys can give me your response. I like that, but I just don't like the awkward silence as we're waiting. And I find it easier and more beneficial for my students to think about it, extended, write it down, practice their writing skills, talk to their peers, talk to their peers and have their peers talk to them. So they're listening and speaking, practicing those skills. And if you've carefully, put them together, then they should be near someone where this is a beneficial activity. But you have to know your students. And then, then having them come back to whole group after they've negotiated both comprehension, their understanding of what we did, and also, practicing their language building and proficiency. So, and it's in a low risk setting, and then everyone wants to sort of try, and I've extended the wait time, but I used an activity to extend the wait time. Jigsaw works a little bit like this also, not as far as extending wait time, but it provides such a great opportunity for the students to have to speak with others. So they each come back to their group, and there's one from each of the groups in each one of the groups, right? So like the number ones go here, the number twos go here. So everyone in the group is one number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they go to their main group, they study about that main government type, and then they go back to their original group, back 1, 2, 3, 4. Now they have an expert one, supposedly, that they were over there, and they're gonna have to explain it to their group members, all of it. But they should have a pretty good understanding because they worked with 4 different people. They talked about it. Those 4 people, if you've carefully, thought about these things, then you will, you'll have it be a really beneficial learning activity just for the content, but it also will be an amazing language activity for your students. So let's take a look at the answer choices because I don't know if it's one of those, but it allows students to independently learn the content of the lesson. It allows the teacher to assess students' ability to summarize and synthesize content. It ensures that students with special needs can fully participate. D, it provides an opportunity for students to interact with teachers one-on-one. I know I erased my drawing, but guys, I'm telling you, since 2003, I've been embarrassed of my drawing. So we have the groups. Each group has 1, 2, 3, 4 is labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. Each group labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth through the rest of the other 2 groups. And the teacher is going to move the students. All number 1s go here, all number 2s go here, all number 3s go here, all number 4s go here. Then give each one of them a different government: monarchy, democracy, authoritarianism. Oh my Lord, what was that? Oligarchy. It did it again. Why? Okay. Oligarchy. This is an A for authoritarianism. So the students work in these groups, the ones, the twos, the threes, the fours. Remember, but they came from another group. There was a group of 1, 2, 3, 4 to begin with. And if you've carefully crafted these, then it should work out for the benefit of everyone. Special ed, ELL, this is an excellent activity for students to practice in a low risk scenario with other people who you've carefully crafted to be supportive and beneficial to each other, to work through some of the content and to go back and practice language skills concerning what you learned and did together as a group. So at the end of however much said group time on their individual government forms, the teacher will say, and I'll tell you, this works really nicely if in a blocked classroom. So there's two different kinds of scheduling. You have traditional scheduling and block scheduling. Block scheduling is typically 90 minutes. So, then you have them go back to their original groups, say goodbye to the ones, say goodbye to the twos, make your way back to your original group. And everyone should come back a semi-little expert, and they're going to read all of it together, but we have 4 semi-experts who have particular knowledge and are tasked with practicing, talking about those content-specific ideas in a low-risk scenario, and they just learned about it in a low-risk sort of scenario. So let's take a look at the answer choices again and see if we can find one that we think is the reason why this is most beneficial. What are the following benefits, like the main benefit for this? Allow students to independently learn the content of the lesson. It allows the teacher to assess students' abilities to summarize and synthesize content. It ensures that students with special needs can fully participate. D, it provides an opportunity for students to interact with a teacher one-on-one, or with teachers one-on-one. So what can we eliminate and bet ourselves $5? Absolutely not this. I bet this is not the right answer.
I'm on the line, Miss Sauceda, and I say C.
You say C is definitely not the answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What would be your rationale? Because we have to have a reason to, like, I bet myself $5 this is the wrong answer because of this.
Well, wait a minute. I got to bet my $5. I better hold on to it. Hold on.
That's right. Does anyone else want to bet $5 on one of these?
I would say eliminate D because
Absolutely. Bet ourselves $5. Why?
it says for the opportunity for students to interact with the teacher one-to-one, and it's not a one-to-one activity, it's a group.
Yeah, and there's no one-to-one
group.
going on. The teacher's just like walking around and, and when somebody needs something, responding to them, giving clarification, just like you would when the students are learning anything, right? It's certainly not one-to-one. It is literally in groups the whole time. It's just in a different set of groups. So we can bet ourselves $100 that this is not the right answer. But I want to do another one and bet ourselves $5 why we could eliminate it and why it's not the right answer.
A, it allows students to independently learn the content of the lesson. They're working in groups.
Thank you. They are not independently doing that at all. So they are doing it in a group. They're learning about these different forms of government in a group together, and collecting something to take back to their peers, a deeper understanding. So we're left with B and C. It allows the teacher to assess students' ability to summarize and synthesize content. And C, it allows, or it ensures that students with special needs can fully participate.
I don't know what they're summarizing. If they're working in groups and they're have different types of governments, Are they summarizing the governments and trying to synthesize content? Are they trying to understand the governments? Are they trying to
Right, exactly. So we don't really know. It didn't give us that much into it. But let me ask you this. Is the teacher assessing them? Did it mention anything about an assessment of their abilities and or knowledge at all in here?
she's teaching a lesson, so she's not assessing if she's not assessing the student if she's teaching them, or it, I don't know. I don't know.
It says the students in each group then disperse to teach what they learned to the other students. Wouldn't that be, that's not the teacher assessing, but I don't know, maybe she's just,
Yeah, she's not
maybe she
assessing
is
them. We're not,
assessing from,
yeah, they are not saying, they didn't say that at all. That she was assessing them. It's talking about, although we should be always actively assessing, to be honest. But and assessing their abilities to summarize and synthesize content. I would say that yeah, you couldn't think about it, guys. Could she assess all of them easily while 4 different groups? Because she can, because I'm saying what was getting me with this one is that you could walk by one of the classes, one of the groups, and sort of gain a little bit of knowledge, not give them a multiple choice question, but gain some data on whether they were able to what they learned, right? What they were able to summarize and what sort of information did they bring back to their group, right? To share and learn. But could I easily assess all of the groups while they're doing this?
no.
No, I can't assess all the groups. I might not even be able to fully assess all of the in the group in that way. It's going to have to be more specific, and it's going to be short-lived collection of that particular ability to synthesize the content. Which is why I would say that B, and I can bet myself $5, because they're not discussing assessment and this particular skill, we're not really assessing that here. We're just assessing about what, not if we are assessing, what did they learn? What information did they gain from the activity? So I would say B is out. And can all special needs students fully participate in this activity?
Yes.
Absolutely, they can and should. And as we learned in the competency, it is our job to make sure that all students can participate, that they have the supports that they need. And one of those supports was when we do group work, that we're carefully creating our cooperative learning groups for the maximum benefit of students. Like, they are a resource to each other. Some of them are better at language, some of them are better at this and that, some of them have this world experience that's important, and taking those things into consideration. But first and foremost, knowing those things about your students. You cannot get students to do hard things, motivate them internally, get them to, believe in the dream or the message that you're selling, unless you know them, unless you see them as real people and build real relationships with them. And our special ed students need to feel super comfortable, not just with you, but with everyone. And everyone is a resource to our special ed students, and they're a resource to us as well. I had many special ed students who the way in which they interpreted poetry and thought about things, like, just kind of blew my mind away sometimes. And my students did that every single year. Every year they taught me something new about a text I had read, for dozens of years with my students, and it never fails. So you have to find ways to ensure that our special needs students can participate fully. There should never be an activity that is overtly exclusionary for our students. We must do everything to make sure that our planning is so thoughtful that it doesn't happen where, oh, they can't participate, and as much as possible. And I've seen some questions regarding that. I believe you guys remember that particular PE thing that we did, and it was like a parachute and you threw it really high up in the air, and it was like a teamwork effort and everyone was around like in a circle, and you could be on the inside and it would be like you were in a dome, or you could have the dome be on the outside. Are you guys remembering this?
Yes, it was the best day ever. When
Right?
that was
Literally the best day. I think it's everyone's favorite best day. Thank you for saying that a little bit. I felt like, did I make that up in my dreams? No, that was the best day ever. And so this question was regarding that. I have no idea what it's called, but it was regarding that, and I'm sure it explained what it's called better. And there was a special ed student who had a mobility, could stand, but had upper mobility issues. And I think there was like an extension issue. And so the question was, what would be the most appropriate way to ensure that this student participates? And the correct answer was to have her stand in between two students who could do the extension and have her participate when it comes down. So she's there and got to go on the inside. It was just that she couldn't extend to catch the air. So finding a workaround in which she was able to participate. So being creative, being thoughtful, being mindful. If you don't have the answer, there are other people on your campus. And in domain 4, it is our professional duty to seek out advice when we don't know what the best answer is. But we certainly need to be asking the questions like, can everybody fully participate? Is this inclusive for all the needs of my students, whether they're special ed, whether they're ELLs, whether they're 504, socioeconomic disadvantage? Am I meeting the needs of my students? So excellent job whittling it down. This was a difficult one, but now I hope it's going to be somewhat of an obvious one when you read a scenario and a test question, that if we have special ed students in our class, they need to be able to fully participate in everything. And we need to be finding a way to make that happen. Identifying, if whatever support it is that they need in order for them to be able to participate fully with what we've designed as the lesson. All right, so this is what making a repeat. Some of you have seen it before. It's a really important one and goes again into supporting particular special populations of students. So can I have someone read this for me? Is it large enough?
The following daily instructional objective is posted on the board of a science class. Content objective. Students will interpret data relative to moving objects and produce a motion graph. Which of the following additional pieces of information would the teacher need to post alongside the content objective in order to meet the criteria of sheltered instruction?
All right, so what keywords and phrases are we seeing here for this scenario? We're not going to even deal with the answer choices yet because we have not analyzed and looked at the details. So what do we have going on here?
Sheltered instruction stands out in my mind, the criteria of sheltered instruction.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that's absolutely a...
So now I need to differentiate what is criteria of sheltered instruction.
Right. What else? What other keywords and phrases? So what meet criteria? What is sheltered instruction? Excellent questions. Anything up here in this first sentence? There any time markers? Does this happen at
daily?
The end? It happens daily. It's a daily thing. It's a everyday thing that the instructional objective, which I erased that. Gee, was. Let me just daily. Yes. Maybe go with a smaller, like, there we go. That works a bit better. So daily. Instructional objective, and this is what it is. Content and instructional objective, same diff. Learning objective, all of those things are referring to the same thing. This is a TEAC, and it was put into a learning goal, instructional objective, content objective. And this is posted, a different one, on the board daily. Which of the following additional pieces of information, extra info that can be posted daily, could we post alongside the content objective in order to meet this sheltered instruction criteria? Now, those of you that have finished the videos and those that attend, pretty frequently, we've gone over sheltered instruction, and we can review it in just a moment. Actually, we will review it in just a moment. But can anyone tell me here, what is sheltered instruction? What is it for, and what does it do? Anyone want to take a guess? What is it for, and what does it do? Okay, it's for ELL support, and it provides scaffolds and strategies and us doing things like building background knowledge in order to remove language barriers for our students, and also to help them practice language, help them practice listening, speaking, reading, and writing about the content objective. Because it's likely that even if they're intermediate, their BICS, their basic interpersonal communication skills, and put that out there for y'all. Let me change my BICS, basic interpersonal. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Communication skills. Those come first. Hi, how are you doing? I went to the mall. I'm hungry. I want to go to the movies. My stomach hurts. Basic interpersonal communication skills. And the CALPS, CALPS are the cognitive academic language proficiency. So cognitive academic language proficiency, we have basic interpersonal skills and cognitive academic language proficiency. And those language proficiency of the academic language is more difficult for our ELL students to gain. But guess what? It's more difficult for sort of everyone to gain. It's that content specific language. And even our native English speakers, they're not amazing as far as oral language proficiency, all of them, they need the supports as well. So it behooves us to make sure that we add an extra piece from the sheltered instructional standards and protocol in order, to be under that, to be sort of in compliance with that. Let's take a look at the answer choices. We have a description of a cooperative learning activity students will engage in as part of the content objective. B, a list of vocabulary words that students will learn or review during the lesson. C, a language objective that will be used to focus on developing student vocabulary. D, a description in the lesson plan of how the teacher will modify language to increase student comprehension. So let us not just choose the right answer right off the bat. We're going to weigh each one against what we've understood and assessed and, sort of bet ourselves $5. This is not the right answer. This does not need to appear on the board next to the content objective. So remember, because that's what the question's asking us. What other piece of information needs to be posted daily in order to help meet the criteria of sheltered instruction. So let's eliminate and whittle it down to the best answer. What can we eliminate and bet ourselves $5? That is absolutely not the right answer.
B.
B?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, a list of vocabulary words that the students will learn or review during the lesson. It's not part of sheltered instruction, and you're going to be writing that underneath the content objective and taking up a whole bunch of space. That's not the correct answer. And you're not, this list is not going to help anything. Like, let's say you did have ELLs, special ed, and you just wrote the list up there. That in it of itself is nothing. And the students will just see the word and that'll be it. Either they'll may know or may have no idea. And just having it there is not enough to sort of do language learning the way sheltered instruction wants you to do language learning. Language building, I should say, cognitive academic language building. What else might we eliminate?
A.
A. Yeah, a
That's it.
description of cooperative learning activities students will engage in as part of the content objective. So a description is not going to help anyone sort of, let me see, learn language. And honestly, you'll get this question wrong if you don't know what sheltered instruction is, but this is not going to help anyone sort of build language skills, if you will. A description of the cooperative learning activities. A description doesn't need to be posted daily underneath the content objective. You're probably not even going to do cooperative learning daily, although you should, because it makes the students, you know, be able to speak with each other. So the more you do it, the better. But certainly a description is not necessary and it doesn't meet the criteria. So what else? We have a language objective that will be used to focus on developing student vocabulary, a description in the lesson plan of how the teacher will modify language to increase student comprehension. Now, if you can only choose one of these things, which one of these things, extra pieces of information, should be put alongside the content objective on the board?
D.
I'm sorry, you think D should be the right answer or eliminated?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had D as the correct answer, but I'm probably off. Sorry.
I'm thinking D too, because I'm looking at student comprehension. What would they understand along with them being ELL support type of students? What other strategy enable them to understand the information, but but comprehension? That's my thought.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see this modify language to increase comprehension. For sure, that would help language learners. This is, and guys, when they give you down to the 2, Mr. Davis, we were talking about that in the beginning. They give you down to 2 and they look like they both could be right, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is one of those. We know that we want to help increase student comprehension, but a description in the lesson plan is not written on the board next to the content objective. Correct? We would post this alongside the content objective, a description in the lesson plan of how the teacher will modify to increase student comprehension. So this is the teacher doing a description in the lesson plan. They're not, or are they posting that the same description from the lesson plan? In any event, D is absolutely wrong. We can bet ourselves $5. One of the biggest, most important features of the sheltered instructional protocol is its use of a language objective. Oops, that's not a good place to put that. Put it over here. A language objective. So for every single thing that you are doing in class, you have a language objective. And so it might be talking about, vocabulary or answering some of your questions in think, pair, share, so they can read about it, write about it, talk about it, listen, speak about it. And having that language objective focuses our instruction, reminds us, hello, have we done enough for the language learners? And honestly, teachers that do the best job at being really cohesive with content objectives, really being applicable to their language objective, like having fully taken into consideration mindful practice of listening, speaking, reading, and writing about my content specific objective every single day. And the teachers that do that across the board, not just with ELLs, because I'm telling you, ELL strategies help everyone. Special ed students, absolutely. They can only gain from opportunities to broaden their understanding of language, practice, listening, speaking. So the language objective is meant to focus your pedagogical attention on a certain feature of language and doing the listening, speaking, reading, and writing concerning that every single day in a mindful way, in addition to having your learning objective or your content objective, whatever that may be. So it's one of the staples of sheltered instructional protocol, having a focused, specific language goal that you want the students to get out of today. So, being able to talk about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, or discuss the different particular things we will be doing language wise, what we'll be listening about, what we'll be speaking about, what we'll be reading and writing about. Does everyone understand why that is the correct answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Because remember, we're building language.
Yes.
We're trying to build language.
Yes.
And most difficult is this one here, because we don't have a lot of practice with cognitive academic specific language. And even our native English speakers have difficulty with this. And so having or following sheltered instructional protocol really helps students gain more comprehension, therefore more confidence, and it leads to them, being more excited about doing stuff and learning new things. But we have to give them opportunities to practice, and we have to be mindful about that, and not just opportunities to listen, to speak, to read and write, to share information back and forth. So it's definitely not going to be a silent situation. We want the language to be used, which is why I always say,
Hey there.
yes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, so that's why that is the correct answer. And we can, let me just make this smaller and go back here to take a look at the things that are in our resource folder. But let's take a look at the components of sheltered instructional protocol. Lesson preparation, which includes a language objective. Clearly define your content objective and language objective, and you write it on the board every single day. More importantly, we're going to talk about it also, because every single day that I had an objective, which was every single day, we talked about it, and then we talked about the language objective. So they knew going in, what are we doing today? What are we learning? What types of things will we be practicing? We went over it, having the students read it out and go over you know, reviewing sometimes. We watched a really good review or video of that's on the T-Test website. I think it's one of the online hours you can view for field-based observation hours, but a math teacher does a really good job of explaining what is our learning objective and what is our language objective, and then sort of previewing what we'll be doing today regarding that. Describes how the students will learn the content. So in what way will we be reading about this? In what way will we be writing about this? In what way will we be listening about this? In what way will we be speaking about this? And being mindful every single day. So listening, speaking, language associated with content, lessons, reading, writing, and then it talks about, you know, examples, gives you some things you can use with your student when they are going to need to read something. And so this might not be in a reading class, could be something in a science class. And so making sure that every day we are practicing mindfully listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And if you are utilizing sheltered instruction as you should, every lesson plan has a space where you describe, it's called the language objective. You describe how you're going to build on vocabulary, build on academic vocabulary, and have them practice listening, speaking, reading, and writing about it every single day. So that answer that we were just looking at was tricky because it was sort of what you'll do, but it didn't say the language objective. And we don't need to have a description of it. We can just put the language objective and then discuss how are we going to listen about this? How are we going to speak about it? And so on and so forth. So in your Google Drive, there are 8 components, and it gives you features. It gives you like a little bit extra of what you can do in that particular one. Building background, so very important. Concepts must be directly related to background experiences whenever possible, personal, cultural, academic. We have to know our students in order to be able to do this well. You have to know your students, and you have to be able to draw from that knowledge and you know, build connections already, find ways to build connections. Sort of an easier way to do this, if you have no idea, is to do the KWL activity. What do we know? What do we wonder? And this is after you've, like, you know, shown a little bit about the topic and maybe defined some language for the students. Then do a KWO. Okay, what do we know? What do we wonder? And then after the reading, what did we learn to make that connection? And that helps ignite in the student that what do we know? That prior knowledge in them. But emphasizing key vocabulary, presenting new vocabulary only in context. It has to be in context. Don't just teach words out of context. So we definitely want to be pre-teaching words that we're going to be using in context for the students to be able to make that connection. We're previewing the language, and then we're going to show it in use of the bigger world, the grand scheme of things. And so that connection has to be clear, and there must be one. So the days of starting a classroom with just like a random set of vocabulary words and hoping they stick are never and a no. We're going to teach you words as we are using them in our classroom so that we have opportunities to listen about them and speak about them and read about them and write about them to enhance our knowledge. There's a strong correlation between vocabulary knowledge and student achievement. It's a huge correlation. Oral language proficiency is a huge game changer. The better our students can listen and speak, the better and able they are to do in any situation, English, math. So it behooves us to help all our students build language, which is why I always say and repeat a million times that ELL practices are best practices for literally everyone. Everyone benefits from Miss Sauceda doing a good job building background experiences and identifying vocabulary that might be unfamiliar and connecting to things that I already know and might find interesting. So everyone benefits, not just ELLs. ELLs, it's necessary because they can't learn language. And we have others that can, make it through on their native language and they're still going to struggle. Everyone benefits. Special ed students, socioeconomic students, native English speakers. Contextualize, again, vocabulary in context, vocabulary in context. Have students self-select vocabulary words. This is really important, again, for all of our students. Not just ELL students have difficulty after they've read something. Let's say you have a 7th grade class and you're reading about something in science, or it's that class that we saw in the questions that was the government, and they read about monarchy, and because they get their information from an article or a reading. They should be self-selecting vocabulary words. If they identified a word within the text that gave them confusion, it behooves them to build on that knowledge, whether via asking us or hopefully because we are utilizing vocabulary skills and practicing whenever possible. This is an activity that helps us utilize vocabulary book like skills, actually utilizing the book. But you have to ask yourself every day, what didn't I understand? What did I find confusing? Which is why I like you guys to do your annotations. And I always say everyone's looks different because you guys have different experiences, different knowledge, different skills, different needs. And so everybody's annotations look different. But it's important that you self-assess. And what was it that I don't fully comprehend, and find a way to build that knowledge. It empowers them because you gave them a choice, and also it has them reflect, what didn't I understand? And we want them to reflect and to think about their thinking. Remember the word metacognition? We're always trying to help our students learn it, especially our ELLs, because it helps them reflect. What did I understand? What did I understand? What message did I get? And so, we need learners and especially language learners to do that. Personal dictionaries and glossaries are an absolute must with our ELL students. They honestly should be with everyone. Everyone is learning language and math. And so I'm hoping there's dictionaries in everyone's classroom. I remember once upon a time that there were only dictionaries in the English classes. That's it. We had all the dictionaries. And I know this because every year they'd come and take our dictionaries to make sure, that there were dictionaries in the class for TOS testing. And you had to have at least 5 or 6. There wasn't one for a student. They made that a law later, but now there's everybody has to have one. There used to be, you could get away with a good stack in the middle of the classroom and then you just had to share. Which is sort of preposterous if you think back on it. But we want our students to have glossaries. Special ed students could totally benefit from having personal glossaries or dictionaries and resources. But more importantly, having that activity where they, after they read something, choose a couple of words that were difficult to understand in the concept and then practice looking those up. Vocabulary skills and use is very important. A word wall for our students. Again, these are all under things we can do to help our students, like as supports, the different graphic organizers we can use to help them understand information. It even tells you how to use it. We use them in different ways in different parts of our lesson, right? So and that's how they get you on some of these answer choices, because they will give you more than one response for sure, but one is better, like for at the end of the activity or during, and they said before, right? So it matters when they say before or during or after in your exam, or they give you any sort of time marker, what will happen first. Please pay attention that your answer choice really goes with all of your keywords and phrases that you identify. Can this happen before, or is this after? Like the KWL, the L is done after. You can't do the L before. You can do the K and the W. So before, it helps guide and it supplements the building of background knowledge. This is how you would use your graphic organizers not as an assessment, but as an instructional tool to help understand concepts and language. So guides and supplements the building of background for difficult text or challenging mathematical concepts, and it helps organize mathematical thinking. This is for graphic organizers. During the lesson, it focuses student attention and makes connections to prior knowledge, things that are already written on there and might have understood. After the lesson, to assist in recording personal understandings, expanding on that graphic organizer, and double checking what was my understanding. Again, a practice in metacognition. Metacognition is the students thinking about their thinking. Meta is me, cognition is thinking, my thinking, me thinking. How did I understand that? How did I comprehend that? What was my thinking? And the graphic organizers, if you use them before, during, and after, and the students know how to use them before, during, and after, and we have particular, activities wherein we do that, it is incredibly beneficial for student comprehension and building language, reflecting back. So I won't go through all of this. I'll just jump back to what we were doing. Any questions on the ELPs? No questions on the ELPs. Let's do this one regarding our ELL students. Would someone like to read it? I'm sorry, I had surgery in my mouth like 3 weeks ago, and I'd been healing really well, but one of the incisions where the stitches, like it's hurts, and it hurts when I talk for long periods of time. So I was just wondering if somebody could read that. I'm gonna need to go back to the dentist and see what is happening.
I got it. I'll read it, Ms. Sauceda. It says English language learners, ELLs, in a second grade class are beginning an interdisciplinary unit about plants. To help the ELLs monitor their own learning during the unit, it would be most effective for the teacher too.
Excellent. Now let's go back and analyze this stuff. So what is important for us to pay attention to? What keywords and phrases?
English language learner.
For sure, English language learners.
Second grade class.
Yes, ma'am. That is very important. Whenever they give us an age group or a grade level, we have to pay attention, because remember, they're different at different developmental stages, right? And so some of the answers might not be developmentally appropriate for a second grader. They might all be developmentally appropriate. We still have to keep it in mind. What else?
I think their own learning during the unit. So monitor their own learning, meaning this may be independent work.
Right. What else? Is there a time marker?
Beginning.
They're beginning an interdisciplinary unit. So we have this group of second graders. They're beginning a unit about plants. And what does interdisciplinary mean? What ideas do we see in interdisciplinary? Another word for interdisciplinary is cross-curricular a little bit. So interdisciplinary means that we're going to be focusing a lot on a lot of different disciplines, right? So there's going to be some math in here. There's going to be a little bit of reading and writing about it. There's going to be certainly some science, and maybe even some history. It's going to be interdisciplinary, the unit about plants. And so we want to help ELLs monitor their own learning during the unit. And it's asking, would it be most effective for the teacher? It would be most effective for the teacher to do which of these things? Whenever they say most, it means that they might have given us more than one okay response. One is better than the other based on the specifics, the details. Monitoring their own learning, second grade ELLs. Let's take a look at the answer choices. Can someone read those for me?
Provide them with the checklist of all the activities in the unit and encourage them to mark off each activity as it is completed. Encourage them to keep all of the unit work in a folder and keep a record of each grade or teacher comment on the inside cover. No. Help them develop a learning log in which they write what they know about plants and then verify their understandings throughout the unit. D, teach them to use reference materials about plants and then encourage them to correct their own errors on unit work.
All right, so let's go back. Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. Let's go back to what we have as our keywords and phrases. It's the beginning, their second grade ELLs. We want to help them monitor their own learning. And which of these can we eliminate emphatically that is not going to help them monitor their own learning? And it's or not appropriate for whatever reason. Either it's not helping them monitor their own learning, it's not appropriate for second graders, it's not appropriate for ELLs, it's not happening in the beginning.
D, not appropriate for second grade.
Right, so encourage them to keep all of their work. Why can we eliminate this?
They're in the second grade. I don't know if they have folders to keep records, or they're in the second grade, so they wouldn't. I'm not saying because you have a lot of smart second graders, but I wouldn't think keeping a folder in the second grade, they would be that responsible.
Yes, but would it help them monitor their own learning? Like really, truly their understanding, because that's what learning means in this question. Monitor their own comprehension, monitor their own learning. Will this encourage, like this encouragement of keeping the folder with the grade and the teacher comment, will that in and of itself help them monitor their own learning? I don't think it would. They're going to be focused on just like you said, this is a difficult task even for second graders. And so they're just going to be getting the task done. I got it in there. I copied the grade. I got the comment on there, and let's go. This is not going to help our ELL students monitor their own learning. They're not even reflecting on their learning itself. They're more concerned with the teacher comment or the grade, not particularly with their own understanding. So what else can we eliminate?
Can we eliminate D?
Yes, we absolutely can. Teach the second graders to use reference materials about the ELL second graders to use. Like, and then guys, go correct your own work using the reference materials. This is not going to be the way to go. Just correcting their work, they don't really understand the misunderstandings and are not yet at the level. It doesn't specify what kind of ELLs, but in any event, this is not best practice, right? So we're left with A and C. Which of these and remember, these are ELLs, and anytime we're talking about supporting ELLs, we're talking about supporting their language development. Yes, we want them to learn the content as well, but also like that's a big task, helping them develop language, and we need them to monitor their understanding so that they identify when they don't understand and build on that understanding, which requires reflection back on their thinking, their understanding. And the best answer is help them develop a learning log, sort of like a diary in which the student reflects on what they understood and they reflect back on those reflections periodically, and their understanding is going to build as they go through this unit of plants, and going back and seeing their misunderstandings or and that they know now, and engaging in that in the learning log is going to be beneficial, not just for their understanding of the content objective, but also for their building of language, for their building and use of language. So you would help them in the beginning develop a learning log in which we would use for the entirety of the unit on plants. And the students would be monitoring their comprehension, and the way that they don't know that they're monitoring it, but asking them to, discuss what they understood, maybe what they were confused about, having them keep that learning log helps them monitor their understanding, monitor their learning. And of course, we're there to make clarifications and build on the existing understanding. Okay, guys, we are at 12:36. And you were wonderful as always. Right, exactly. You never really posted lesson plans, and that's the way that I understood that question. I'm barely looking at the chat references, but thank you all for attending so much. Y'all are great. Teachers are the real MVPs. I say that every single time to you guys, and I hope you believe it. It is so very true. The most valuable players in society, from which all other professions come. And the children, they don't get to decide who their parents are, but they by law deserve to have a teacher that sees them and wants them to learn and excel and believes in them, and builds a relationship to help them achieve high expectations. So the amount of work you guys do, the amount of studying on a Saturday, an hour and a half, you guys do it for sometimes an hour and a half on a Wednesday night. And I just want to thank you. It's hard to be a teacher. It's hard to become a teacher, but you guys are awesome. And I thank you for your service to our communities. Yes, absolutely, Ms. Johnson. Yes, ma'am.
No, I was just saying thank you so much. Thank you for your help. And
yes, absolutely.